Chuck, about Jack Smith, because in the concurrence yesterday, Justice Clarence Thomas took things a little bit of a step further and said, we're not so sure even the appointment of a special counsel named Jack Smith was legal. We'll leave that to somebody else. Are there concerns that even Jack Smith's being there is in jeopardy at this point?
Perhaps, although it ought not be. This is an issue that has been litigated many times, and each time the courts of the United States have determined, Willie, that special counsels like Jack Smith are constitutionally permitted, that their funding is constitutionally permitted. They still are inferior officers to the Attorney General of the United States. Basically, no problem with the appointment of a special counsel. But this is an issue pending before Judge Cannon in the Southern District of Florida. And I am not quite sure why Justice Thomas did this, but he may have breathed some life into Mr. Trump's argument in front of Judge Cannon that Jack Smith was improperly, unconstitutionally appointed. That is not the law. That is not the case. If she rules that way, I imagine she would be overturned on appeal. But it is a pending issue. And it seems to me that Justice Thomas was trying to give some sustenance to this argument. I believe it's a faulty argument. Every court that has examined it so far has found it to be a faulty argument.
Reading from the concurrence of Justice Thomas, he writes this: if there's no law establishing the office that the special counsel occupies, then he cannot proceed with this prosecution. That's from Clarence Thomas. So let's take one step back, big picture. Where does this leave us now, Lisa Rubin? I think a lot of people were surprised perhaps by the extent of this holding yesterday, by the murkiness it left for judges going forward about what's official and what's private. What's your final assessment now after what we've seen yesterday?
Based on yesterday's opinion, a big chunk of the indictment is going to have to come out. That's the allegations having to do with Donald Trump's interactions with the Department of Justice. I think the allegations about the pressure campaign on Mike Pence are much at risk. That's the sort of second category of allegations that the court says it will be a high bar to rebut the presumption of official immunity there. And then you've got everything else, and that includes the fake elector scheme. I am heartened to some extent that Justice Barrett in her concurrence drops a footnote and says none of that should ever be considered official. Not only did you have a concession that it wasn't an oral argument, but also the president has no role in the administration of federal elections. It should never have been considered or even thought of as remotely official. We'll see how Judge Chutkan, when the case comes back to her, whether she schedules hearings or briefings to try and untangle this. The best we can hope for is maybe a hearing where evidence is presented and witnesses are called, so that even if the public doesn't get the satisfaction of a real trial, some of the things that the Department of Justice has been holding back that clearly they have to justify this prosecution, we will see as a public before November, Willie.
Last word to you, Chuck.
Yeah, Lisa's right. The prosecutors are going to lose some evidence. The question is how much. As a former prosecutor, I hated losing evidence, Willie. There's no thing as too much evidence. And so here the prosecutors are going to need to see where they stand at the end of the day, at the end of those hearings. What do they have? What have they lost? Can they go forward? We shall see.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.